Developed by Team Cherry, Hollow Knight is a game I have adored for some time. Ever since I first laid my eyes on it, I knew I wanted to try it out. From just the visuals alone, this was a game I felt would be worth my $1, and boy was I right. I'd never really played a Metroidvania game before, but I had always heard good things about the genre. Now that what seems to be the final DLC for the game has dropped, and been out for a while, I decided I would share my thoughts on what made the game enjoyable for me. I'd like to preface that this piece is purely opinion, and by no means am I unbiased towards Hollow Knight. I just want to express my feelings for this game, and if it persuades you to either purchase the game or not, that is not my intention. So let's get into the first aspect of the game that I feel sets up the rest of the experience: the atmosphere. Hollow Knight takes place in a dark and dreary world. As the player, you are dropped into this world with no sense of direction or any idea as to why you are there. Nothing is really set up for you. For all you know, you're just an adventurer, and your first goal is to move right. If you look in your inventory, the first thing you will notice is that your weapon is called a nail. If you never saw any promotional material for Hollow Knight, you might wonder why you'd carry a nail as a weapon. As you progress further and reach the main town in the game, Dirtmouth, you'll notice that this world is much different than other adventure games. The stylized animations that your character has and the inhabitants of the world are beautiful, and the coloration and textures create a very unique visual presentation. You will eventually delve into the depths of Hallownest, the underground city that the player explores throughout the entire game. You will begin to realize as you make your way through the tunnels and caverns of Hallownest that you are not a regular-sized being akin to Link from The Legend of Zelda. You are in a world where all creatures are designed around bugs and bug-like features. Now the fact that you carry a nail around makes a little more sense. This setting makes for a very unique experience, as it seems like a very original idea, at least from my perspective. You still have no clue what you are in search of, but Hallownest beckons to be explored, and so you do. The environments of this game create many different feelings alone. Each place you go in this game expresses a different emotion, and you begin to wonder what happened to this fallen city. The game gives hints, but nothing is explicitly stated on what happened to Hallownest for most of the game, and allows the player to imagine and create their own scenarios. If one looks at the visuals of Hollow Knight, I believe regardless of their feelings toward the style, they will appreciate the blood and sweat the developers put into it. I think this is a good place to shift to the other aspect of this game's atmosphere, that being the soundtrack. The soundtrack of Hollow Knight is honestly amazing. Composed by Christopher Larkin, the music of this game relies heavily on string and brass instruments. Larkin creatively uses these instruments and a few others to evoke a multitude of feelings in each area of this game. In places like Fungal Wastes and Green Path, the music is slightly upbeat and creates a more light-hearted atmosphere. These places in the game really relieve some of the tension that surrounds the darker areas. This is done almost entirely through the music alone. Although the coloration of these areas might seem a little less dreary, they would still be unsettling if the proper music wasn't implemented. In areas such as the City of Tears, you might have some mixed feelings with the plucking of the strings as the song plays while you explore. Although very beautiful, the City of Tears has a combination of uplifting and saddening notes to it. I believe this really fits the City of Tears as a whole. It represents all the hope and joy the city once had, while also showing the reality of how it has fallen. This is all done through the composition of one song. The anticipation for each area comes not only from the wonderment of what it will look like, but also what it will sound like. I have not felt such a connection to a soundtrack since Halo's OST by Marty O'Donnell. Without these songs, the atmosphere of Hollow Knight wouldn't be able to encapsulate the player as much as it currently can. Other aspects of sound design are great as well. The sounds of hitting enemies with your nail feel just right, and the caverns and sounds of hitting rocks really keep one immersed in the world. Sounds of running water and metal on metal all fit the bill when it comes to a side-scrolling adventure game. Nothing is too flashy, but nothing really feels out of place or impossible either. Another part of the sound design was of course voice acting. Although not a massive part of the game, There are voiced parts for characters you interact with. The inhabitants of the world are sentient bugs. They speak their own fabricated language that sounds very pleasing to the ears. The sentences seem to flow very well. It makes you feel like you are indeed in another realm. The voice lines are not very long, so it makes you wonder if the language is decipherable at all, considering the readable dialogue can be quite long. All in all, the developers took their time to really flesh out the world they created. Every aspect from the sounds to the artwork looked like they were painstakingly crafted to create an amazing experience for the player. Their great efforts don't end there though. Now we have to talk about the gameplay and game feel of Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania where the player traverses a 2D world, exploring locations and fighting enemies. Your main form of attack is slashing enemies with your nail. This nail can be upgraded to hit stronger using the nailsmith and collecting pale ore. There are also spells that deal damage as well. You either shoot a soul beam, do a soul dive, or blast soul in a cone above yourself. You will obtain these abilities over time as you explore, and to use them, you'll need to gather soul. Soul is received from hitting enemies with your nail, and can be used for your spells or to heal yourself. You will more or less be using your soul for healing purposes over spells, because damage from the nail is just more efficient, although the spells being an option is always nice. The healing system is great, as it encourages combat as a means to gain health. The game also includes abilities such as wall grabbing, dashing, and double jumping. These become very useful and are necessary for certain parts of the game. I feel that you obtain new things frequently enough to keep the interest of the player so that things don't ever feel old too quickly. You also have soul vessels and mask fragments that help you increase your health and soul capacities. These are found from platforming to battles and other challenges that you have to complete in order to obtain them. The platforming challenges in Hollow Knight are decent. Nothing seems unfair, and they are just challenging enough to not be overly easy. The combat system in the game is quite fun. There are many different approaches to take to any given scenario due to all of the abilities you gain through your journey. As a small knight, the game truly makes you feel as though you are overcoming outrageous odds. I believe the depth of the combat in Hollow Knight is shown more so through the charm system. These charms can be obtained through discovery, fighting a boss, or purchased at a vendor. The charms give you buffs and abilities as you wear them, anywhere from increasing the size of your nail to increasing health or the rate at which you can dash. Charms are the bread and butter of Hollow Knight's gameplay. You can only equip a few charms at a time since you are limited by how many notches you have. You can obtain notches through various means just like other items. Each charm takes up a certain amount of notches, so the player must strategize and think of which combination will be most useful in their upcoming endeavor. All of this sounds good, but in any game, there must be a risk to what you are doing. If you're fighting enemies, they're fighting back. So what happens if you lose? Well, it isn't game over, but there are consequences, and it revolves around money. The currency of Hollow Nest is called Geo. You can find Geo by killing enemies, finding chests, or finding deposits of Geo that you can whack with your nail. Having money in this game is crucial to character progression, so making sure you have plentiful funds is key. You can store Geo with a bank system, but it is somewhat tedious. The main punishment for death in Hollow Knight revolves around losing all money you hold at death. You can collect your money if you return to where you died and kill your shade. This apparition will be left behind wherever you die. You must fight it to become whole again and receive your lost Geo. You can also go to a summoner who takes rancid eggs as payment in Dirtmouth. One egg will have the summoner bring your shade to that spot, so you don't have to travel all the way back to where you died. I like that there are two options to receiving your Geo. However, if you die a second time before getting your money back, you will have lost it all. This is a very balanced system to create risk for the player. The bosses in Hollow Knight are probably the main place you'll be dying, as they can become quite difficult. Each one is unique and challenging. By the time you run into these bosses, your gear seems slightly behind where it should be, creating the real difficulty of the fights. Early on, since you don't have a lot of health, some bosses can kill in 2 shots. I think the designs of all the bosses are cool, and that each one is fun to fight in their own way. They are where your skills are truly tested as you progress through the game, and I think they were implemented very well. The gameplay overall is amazing. It is a very fair and well-crafted system that rewards the player properly whilst also giving them supplemental challenges. I felt so engaged as I played through this game. But besides the combat and surrounding systems, the last part of Hollow Knight that I enjoyed the most was the exploration. From the Forgotten Crossroads to the Green Path, the areas of Hollow Knight each have a unique feel to them. The dark and decrepit areas are balanced out by vibrantly colored areas that still express the feeling of a collapsed civilization. The Green Path is gorgeous, but only because it is overgrown with flora and vines that are filled with life. Take that away, and it would look as broken down as the City of Tears. Enough of the structures are preserved to be able to distinguish what they are and what they represent. Nothing is too cryptic, but it gives the player just enough to want more. The anticipation of getting to each new area is what gave me the most pleasure in playing Hollow Knight. They were always so different from one another. The royal waterways and Deep Nest were so dark and mysterious, while places like the Fungal Wastes and Queen's Garden were vibrant and colorful. No matter where you go, there are always secrets to uncover, and things to find. I honestly felt that boss fights were more of an impediment to my exploration, rather than an enemy that I wanted to kill purely for the fun of it. I had a genuine goal of getting to where I wanted to be, even if I didn't know where that was. There are plenty of treasures and stuff to find, such as idols, journals, and whatnot. You never knew what the item would be. It could be a new charm, or just some item purely used for selling to get Geo. Regardless, discovery is a main draw for playing this game. I certainly enjoyed trying to figure out the puzzles that led to a new item, and all the challenges that surrounded them. Things such as the mask fragments and soul vessels are also found in this way. Cracked walls are everywhere, and breaking them can lead to new areas or treasure. They aren't too hard to see, but some are hidden very well. You'll most likely come across some other collectibles called grubs. Grubs can be found in little glass jars, and freeing them will let them return to their home. If you go back to the grub's colony, you'll be rewarded with some items or money. It's just pure fun venturing into the unknown and discovering new things about Hollow Nest and its downfall, as well as those who once lived there. I believe this is where I have to get to my one gripe about the game. Since I am not an avid Metroidvania player, the backtracking felt very tedious at times. You have a mode of fast travel, that being the stagways, but there don't seem to be enough of them. Certain locations are so far from the closest stag station that it makes the trek unbearable. Starting out the game, this isn't a huge problem, as you have to unlock the stations before you can use them. However, the endgame content can be off-putting, considering how far you have to travel on foot in certain cases. The dashing ability makes this a little more tolerable, and you can use the Dash Master Charm to go even faster. Overall, not a huge flaw, but one I couldn't help but mention. A good thing about Hollow Knight's death system is that you will always spawn back at the last bench you sat at. Benches are a saving mechanism and help you progress through the game. Without these, dying would be a real pain and would make it hard to return to points you've died. Benches also give the player a sense of progression in knowing that they have just reached a new key location of sorts. The benches also serve as a point of recollection and peace. The maps you have in the game can be bought, but they're only rough outlines. To fill them out, you must actually explore the areas. Once you sit down at a bench again, you can then draw the map in more detail. You can use a charm to see your position on the map, and although it only takes one notch, it seems like it should just be built into the mapping system. Everything else about this system seems amazing to me. There are just enough hints to make finding most things not seem entirely unfair. The player never gets discouraged from venturing into unknown places because they always have a general sense of what to be careful of and what direction to go. This is why I see exploration as the main reason to play this game. I will make a short note that there is a lore to this game, and I find it fascinating, but it's not what kept me playing. For those who love to delve into that stuff, it's there, and it's great for what it is. I feel like anything of substance I could say about the story would give too much away and spoil things, so I'll refrain from it. All I will say is that the game does a great job of telling the story without narrating it to you. The player can put the pieces together and come to their own conclusions, which is a good way to tell a story that is more mystery than not. Now I think it's time to give my final thoughts. Hollow Knight is an amazing game with so much content. The developers really took each aspect of the game and crafted a great experience. I would recommend that anyone who is slightly intrigued by what I had to say to go and try this game. On Steam, you can return games you haven't played for more than 2 hours, so there is no reason not to. The game is $15, and if you end up playing more than 2 hours, I'm certain you will already love Hollow Knight by that point. Not to mention, all the DLC for this game has been free. In my final conclusion, I believe that Hollow Knight will be remembered for years to come as an indie dev gem. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you could give me any criticism in the comments section, that would also be great as well. This is one of my first videos, and I don't really have much experience doing anything like this, so any criticism would be greatly appreciated. I hope to do more Game Gusher reviews in the future, and hopefully I'll get better with time. Until then, keep on gaming.